Goldberg's bad news. It's the Atlantic. It's failing. It's probably going to be out of business soon. And it's a terrible magazine. They made up all sorts of stories about me with standing over the grave of soldiers. There's nobody that treats the military better than me, and they treat me well too. They showed that in the election. But they write stories. It's such a disgrace. And there are plenty of others also. But Goldberg's a loser. His magazine's a big loser. And what it was, we believe, is somebody that was on the line with permission, somebody that was with Mike Waltz, worked for Mike Waltz at a lower level, had, I guess, Goldberg's number or called through the app, and somehow this guy ended up on the call. Now, it wasn't classified, as I understand it. There was no classified information. There was no problem, and the attack was a tremendous success. So I can only go by what I've been told. I wasn't involved in it, but I was told by, and the other people weren't involved at all. But I feel very comfortable, actually.
You were here to do. Nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans because they know it's not war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information. You know who sees war plans? I see them every single day. I looked at them this morning. I looked at attack plans this morning. You know who does attack plans and war plans? Men like that admiral right there, Paparo for the Indo-Pacific, or Eric Kurilla, our general in CENTCOM. They do attack plans and war plans, and thank God we have those leaders who do it.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about SignalGate, the story that the mainstream liberal media is obsessed with, because they don't want to talk about the domestic terrorism that's happened in this country via left-wing extremists who have been radicalized by the Democrat Party to attack Teslas because they hate Elon Musk. No, they want to talk about that. So again, they want to talk about the Signal chat that had information that was sensitive in nature, that was accidentally leaked to a Trump deranged propagandist, Jeffrey Goldberg, who decided to publish some portions of the chat in which the mainstream liberal media picked this up, and now they're obsessed with this story because the narrative here is that Pete Hegseth, along with Mike Waltz and the rest of Trump's cabinet secretaries who were in the chat, they were careless with information, okay? They leaked war plans, right? War plans, okay, to journalists, okay? This is a narrative. However, as all of these narratives tend to change, okay, when we get more information, the mainstream liberal media, they're walking back from this whole "this was war plans" rhetoric, because when Jeffrey Goldberg was forced to release the information that he claimed was classified, but the Trump administration says it's not classified, and then he has to release it, it turns out that he was exaggerating, right? He was exaggerating quite a bit.
News now. We're going to head to the White House where Peter Doocy is standing by as we have this Fox News alert for you. The Atlantic has now just published brand new messages from the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and others from that Signal chat group that accidentally included a journalist. Peter Doocy is live at the White House for us. The acknowledgement comes from the reporter that Hegseth, Peter, said that nobody was texting war plans in response to the release of these messages by the journalists. You also had members of the security team in that hearing yesterday saying no classified information was shared in that group, which led the journalist to then publish this piece just moments ago saying, we faced a dilemma then, because he said that war plans were indeed exchanged on this text. What are you hearing and what are we learning now?
Well, we have some more of the material that was being discussed on this chat. Pete Hegseth says no war plans, and let's show you what we have, and you can decide if this looks like a war plan. He texted the group at one point. At 2:10, more F-18s launch, second strike package. Then at 2:15, strike drones on target, all caps. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets. It goes on to explain F-18 strikes, and then he says more to follow. He says they were currently clean on OPSEC. We know that the Pentagon has more detailed imaging and coordinates than that. And there is no imaging or satellite photos or coordinates or targets listed here specifically. And so it would seem that if you're going to fly F-18s and drones to take out Houthi guys, wherever it is that they're hiding out, the Pentagon has all of that information. So when they say there's no war plans, maybe they just mean that this text image did not include the full package of everything that they knew and everything that they could see and hear on the ground. But there is definitely some details, at least about timing, that is available. But the White House basically, or rather top national security officials basically dared the Atlantic to put this out. They sent Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe to the Hill yesterday to say there was nothing classified in here. Jeffrey Goldberg says that Caroline Leavitt emailed him last night suggesting that they did not want this material out there. But if it's not classified, it's not classified, and the Atlantic decided to go forward. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, so they're changing their narrative in regards to war plan versus attack plan. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to get into how to characterize this because I think that's less important than the question of, okay, what information was shared and was the information classified? And the Trump administration and their officials are maintaining that, hey, the information was not classified, okay? And that communication via Signal is an acceptable channel of communication for the type of information that was relayed in this group chat, okay? And John Ratcliffe actually came out here and he called out Jeffrey Goldberg for exaggerating, lying about the information, the nature of the information that was in the chat, particularly what John Ratcliffe has said in the chat. Take a look.
With regard to that article, I also would appreciate the opportunity to relay the fact that yesterday I spent 4 hours answering questions from senators as a result of that article that were intimating that I transmitted classified information because there were hidden messages. Those messages were revealed today and revealed that I did not transmit classified information and that the reporter, who I don't know, I think intentionally intended it to indicate that. That reporter also indicated that I had released the name of an undercover CIA operative in that signal chat. In fact, I had released the name of my chief of staff, who is not operating undercover. That was deliberately false and misleading, and I appreciate the opportunity to reflect that my answers haven't changed. I used an appropriate channel to communicate sensitive information. It was permissible to do so. I didn't transfer any classified information, and at the end of the day, what is most important is that the mission was a remarkable success, is what everyone should be focused on here, because that's what did happen, not what possibly could have happened.
I want to address briefly the Signal chat issue that I know many of you are concerned about. The President and National Security Advisor Waltz held a press conference yesterday with a clear message. It was a mistake that a reporter was inadvertently added to a Signal chat with high-level national security principals having a policy discussion about imminent strikes against the Houthis and the effects of the strike. The National Security Advisor has taken full responsibility for this, and the National Security Council is conducting an in-depth review along with technical experts working to determine how this reporter was inadvertently added to this chat. The conversation was candid and sensitive, but as the President and National Security Advisor stated, no classified information was shared. There were no sources, methods, locations, or war plans that were shared. This was a standard update to the National Security Cabinet that was provided alongside updates that were given to foreign partners in the region.
I just spoke to the President about it, yes.
Then let me ask you, if I can, very quickly. In the chat, Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, so some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s would launch. The DoD manual details classified information as significant military plans, saying that is secret, that's classified. So what about, there are no methods, there are no sources, but that's not what determines what's classified. So what is it about what Pete Hegseth wrote that makes you say this is not classified?
Well, it's not just me saying that, Peter. It's the Secretary of Defense himself who is saying this as well. And he put out a very strong statement earlier today listing all of the things that were not included in that message that he sent to the group. And again, this message, there was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed. Why did the Atlantic downgrade their allegation about war plans to attack plans? They're now playing word games because they know this was sensationalist spin from a reporter who is well known for doing this. We have said all along no war plans were discussed, no classified material was sent. You have the Secretary of Defense saying that. You have the Director of the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI Director, all testifying to that under oath, and they should be trusted with that.
To be clear, Americans can make the decision for themselves, but whether is the
Sure.
you said it's not war plans. Would you characterize these as military plans, military operation plans?
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior staff. And I'm so glad, Peter, that you said the American public can decide for themselves, because I think the American public should decide for themselves based on the outcome of this operation. And what happened in this operation? Terrorists that were allowed to run wild by the Biden administration were killed because of the direction and the determination of this president and his team.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that, okay? Now, the debate around whether or not what you see here is war plans or whether or not they are attack plans, that debate is never going to be settled. The debate around whether or not this information is classified, should it be classified, did Pete Hegseth declassify it, that debate also is never going to end as well too, okay? But I'm here to tell you, it really doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter is because the argument from the Trump administration will probably be that Pete Hegseth, as Secretary of the Department of Defense, has original classification authority, which means that, at least in some circumstances, to a certain extent, he can classify and declassify information at will.
Okay. If I can very quickly, in the chat, Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, so some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s would launch. The DoD manual details classified information as significant military plans, saying that is secret, that's classified. So what about, there are no methods, there are no sources, but that's not what determines what's classified. So what is it about what Pete Hegseth wrote that makes you say this is not classified?
Well, it's not just me saying that, Peter. It's the Secretary of Defense himself who is saying this as well. And he put out a very strong statement earlier today listing all of the things that were not included in that message that he sent to the group.
And they probably will argue that President Trump gave him the authority to declassify this information if there's some argument that, well, he needed to go through a formal process to declassify these war plans, the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others had to review first. I think, again, the argument ultimately is going to be that the president gave him the authority to do it. He can do it, and he did do it when he put this information, which, again, the left is claiming is classified, into this chat, and therefore at that point it is declassified, or that he declassified it beforehand. All I'm saying is that the whole classification argument is not an argument that I think Democrats really want to engage in, because if they want to argue that this information is classified, then all of the Democrats and Jeffrey Goldberg should probably spend some time in jail, right, for leaking this classified information, right? Because Jeffrey Goldberg put it out, Democrats put it out, all of those people should go to jail, right, according to their own argument. So I personally don't think that this is what the media is making it out to be, right? I think that a lot of this is being exaggerated, is being overblown. But regardless, that doesn't mean that somebody shouldn't be held accountable. I just don't think that Pete Hegseth is the guy to hold accountable if that's what you're going to do, because ultimately at the end of the day, he was not aware that Jeffrey Goldberg was in the chat. And also on top of that, they're saying that the information was not classified. They're the final authority on that. I think the president is going to be the final authority on whether or not the information was classified. And ultimately, there's not anything they're going to be able to do about it, right? I just think that that conversation in and of itself is a conversation that is pointless because ultimately the president is going to have the final say, right, on that. Okay, we already know where the president is going to side. Now, the one mistake that I think the president is making, and I believe that this is a huge mistake, okay, is not holding somebody accountable for what happened. And I think personally that somebody likely should be Mike Waltz, okay? And the reason why I say this is because Mike Waltz is the guy that added Jeffrey Goldberg to the chat, okay? As you can see here, Mike Waltz added you to the group. Now, originally, when this story first came out, the article made it sound like it was a possibility that some of the staff were in the chat. They were standing in for the secretaries, okay? And this is consistent with President Trump coming out here and saying that it was actually somebody on Mike Waltz's staff that was responsible for Jeffrey Goldberg being put into the chat, okay? And a lot of people believe that it was Alex Wong, who is the deputy for Mike Waltz, who is responsible. However, upon looking at the chat and the people that are in the chat, it looks like the staffers that were in this chat, they were putting theirs separately. So it is likely that for each person in the chat, like it was actually them. It wasn't a staffer standing in for them because, again, the staffers were added to the chat separately. Now, again, that could not be true. I don't know. I'm just saying that that's what it looks like based off all of the text messages being released. Okay, so it looks like Mike Waltz was actually Mike Waltz. Now, again, it could have been Alex Wong, but it looks like it was Mike Waltz. I mean, Mike Waltz comes out and says that, hey, that was me, right? When asked directly about whether or not his staffers were involved, which is what President Trump claimed, Mike Waltz is saying no. And he also is saying that he takes full responsibility for this happening, okay? Although he never met Jeffrey Ford in the past, okay? And he doesn't know who he is, and he doesn't know how the number got in his phone. Take a look.
So they want to focus on this. It's embarrassing, right. Yes. We're going to get to the bottom of it. I just talked to Elon on the way here. We've got the best technical minds looking at how this happened. But I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't know what staffer is responsible for this right now?
Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible, and look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like someone else. Now whether he did it deliberately or it happened in some other technical mean is something we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, so Mike Waltz, his own testimony is in conflict with the president in regards to who added Jeffrey Goldberg's number to the chat, because whoever added Jeffrey Goldberg's number to the chat should be fired, right? And if it was a staffer, then the staffer should be fired. But Mike Waltz is saying, no, it wasn't a staffer. It was him, right? He added Jeffrey Goldberg's number to the chat, but he didn't know that it was Jeffrey Goldberg's number. He didn't know that Jeffrey Goldberg's contact information was put into his phone. He's implying that he was hacked, okay? This is why he says, well, we're going to get Elon Musk on it to investigate, because he's basically saying that this was some type of operation in which somebody compromised his phone and put the number in there, right? That is what he's saying. I don't know if that is true, right? I don't know if that is true. But what I do believe is true is that Mike Waltz did meet Jeffrey Goldberg, and that he does know Jeffrey Goldberg in some capacity, and that he's not been 100% truthful in regards to his relationship with Jeffrey Goldberg, because now there are images that have resurfaced of Mike Waltz and Jeffrey Goldberg at the same event. Now, this was a photo where you have Waltz standing next to Goldberg doing a 2021 event at a French embassy. The event Waltz attended was a Q&A with a French filmmaker and was moderated by Goldberg. Now, I know some people will say, well, that doesn't mean that Mike Waltz knew Jeffrey Goldberg just because they were at the same event in which you have Jeffrey Goldberg standing right behind him, right? Likely he talked to Jeffrey Goldberg in some capacity, but it doesn't mean that it happened for sure. All I'm going to say is this. The chances of Jeffrey Goldberg's phone number being in Mike Waltz's phone and you having photos of Jeffrey Goldberg and Mike Waltz together at an event like this, and Jeffrey Goldberg and Mike Waltz have never known each other, never met at all, it is highly unlikely for that to be the case, right? I'm just being 100% with you guys. I am not the type of person that's going to gaslight you like Democrats. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just telling you that it doesn't look like Mike Waltz is being 100% truthful when it comes to his relationship with Jeffrey Goldberg. And again, that's why I have a lot of questions, because Jeffrey Goldberg testified that he wasn't added once. He was actually added twice, because whoever added him sent him a connection request on the app. Okay. So he had to accept the connection request first. And then there was another request to have Jeffrey Goldberg be added to the group chat, right? So whoever added Jeffrey Goldberg didn't add him just once. They added him twice, right? They interacted with Jeffrey Goldberg twice, okay? I'm not saying it was done on purpose. I don't know. There could be some nefarious intent. The only thing I'm saying at this point is that the Trump administration is making a huge mistake by not firing Mike Waltz or his staffer or whoever put Jeffrey Goldberg's number in the phone. I think at this point, if you can't figure out who did it, okay, for sure, then you have to fire Mike Waltz's whole staff. And the reason why I say this is because, first and foremost, it's the right thing to do. You had a security breach, okay? Regardless of whether or not it was intentional or an accident, somebody has to be held accountable. In the private sector, okay, if you have this type of information leak, yeah, you're getting fired, right? I mean, I worked in financial services, and I can tell you firsthand that protecting client information is one of the top priorities of any firm, okay? And if an employee leaks information, accident or intentional, doesn't matter. If that information gets leaked, sensitive information about a client gets leaked, they're going to be fired, okay? Now, I know this is not the exact same thing, but I'm just saying from a PR standpoint, right? From the point of the message that the administration is trying to send to the American people, which is that, hey, we have competent people in charge and that people are going to be held accountable, okay? When mistakes are made, people are held accountable, unlike the last administration. When you look at the Afghanistan withdrawal, in which you had American soldiers die, lose their lives due to the incompetence of the Biden administration, not firing somebody, not holding somebody accountable for what happened does not send a good message about this administration, especially when you're trying to sell to the American people that we're not like the Biden administration, right? We're not just going to allow these type of mistakes to happen and nobody's held accountable. Again, this is why the Biden administration takes so much flack and so much criticism for what happened with Afghanistan. Nobody was held accountable. So in a situation like this, somebody needs to be held accountable to send a message that, hey, this type of stuff is not acceptable. Okay, whether it was a mistake or on purpose, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's what's important here, because again, if this happened in the private sector, the employee would be fired, right? So when it happens at the highest level of our government, somebody has to be fired. Somebody has to be held accountable. And I'm not saying that it has to be done on the media's timeline. I'm not saying that we have to do it to capitulate to the Democrats. No, I'm just saying it because ultimately at the end of the day, I believe that this administration should live up to the same standards that they set for other people, right? That's one of the biggest issues with the Democrat Party. One of the main reasons why the Democrats lost, and I talk about this all the time, is because they set standards for other people that they didn't live up to, that they didn't actually really believe in, right? That's why they kept coming out here and asking, why does Kamala have to be better than Hitler? Why does Kamala have to be better than Hitler? That is what the Democrats were arguing, right? That was their downfall. They weren't who they say they were. And this administration can't make that same mistake. They should not make the same mistake of refusing to live up to the standards that they set for other people. If what Biden did is bad, him not holding people accountable for mistakes is bad, then it's bad when the Trump administration does it. That's just the honest to God truth. I think we can all agree that this leak is being overblown, right? That the media is exaggerating about the information that was in the chat, okay? The nature of the information. It's debatable whether or not it was classified or not. We can all agree, right, that, hey, this is overblown. But I think it is reasonable to say, you know what? Somebody should be held accountable for this. Regardless, there was a breach when it comes to national security, and the person responsible for it needs to be fired. Okay? Because at this point, I really believe that Mike Waltz is a liability. I'm not sure what about Mike Waltz that is preventing the Trump administration from firing them. Again, I'm not saying they have to do it on the media's timeline, but it would be in President Trump's best interest to actually investigate this and to figure out exactly why this happened, to prevent this from happening again in the future, right? And to, again, get rid of the person who seems to be a liability at this point, right? That's what seems to be the case with Mike Waltz. Who knows? Maybe it's because Mike Waltz was just in Congress and he just got this job, and if he gets fired for this, then, you know, he's kind of out of a job. But hey, it happens. It happens at the end of the day. I'm just saying, me personally, I don't really trust Mike Waltz. I don't trust his staff. And because of that reason, I believe that after an investigation has occurred, right, whatever internal investigation they're doing, if they know who did it, then they should fire that person. If they can't figure out who did it, then they need to fire the whole staff, okay? And if they do that, then this story basically goes away, right? This story essentially becomes, it's not a nothing burger, but basically they can say that, hey, you know what? A mistake was made. We held our guy accountable. Democrats don't hold their people accountable, right? What did they do to Hillary? Nothing. What did they do when it came to Afghanistan withdrawal? Nothing. Nobody who makes mistakes in the Biden administration has ever held accountable, but we held ours accountable. Therefore, we're better than you when it comes to this. And again, also on top of that, it's just the right thing to do. It sets a good example for the American people that Trump administration officials are being held to the highest of standards, right? The people that are working for his government are being held to standards, okay, that are higher, right, than the standards that normal people have to work under, right? I mean, you, again, like I said, if this would have happened in the private sector, dude is fired on the spot, right? It doesn't matter. We all know somebody's getting fired. So there's no excuse for there not to be firings in this situation, unless they know for sure that this was done with nefarious intent from somebody outside of Mike Waltz's team, right? In a way that was basically unpreventable or unknowable by Mike Waltz, okay? Which I find to be highly unlikely. And what I'm saying is that, like, for example, if they found out that, I don't know, some branch of the intelligence agency hacked into Mike Waltz's phone and then changed the contact number, it would have to be something like that. Something where it's like, all right, like, there was no way he could have prevented this, right? That this was something that it didn't happen because he was careless or he was reckless. Like, he legitimately was a victim of a hack, right? Which, that is what Mike Waltz is implying, right? That's the story that he's going with. Again, I'm not saying it's impossible, okay? I'm just saying that I just don't know, right? I don't know at this point. It also could be that somebody on his staff could be working with Jeffrey behind the scenes, and somebody on his staff could have got a hold of Mike Waltz's phone and then put his contact number in there. Okay, that also could have happened as well too. But that's what I'm saying, that if they can't determine who did it, right, for certain, then you got to get rid of everybody, because clearly his staff is a liability and he picked his staff. Regardless of whether or not he is at fault, okay, somebody has to take responsibility because this did happen, right? Regardless of whether or not we agree that it's a super big deal or not, okay? Regardless of whether or not the media is exaggerating, somebody has to be held accountable because it happened. And it is not a good message to send to the American people that nobody should be held accountable or that nobody's going to be fired when we haven't had time for a full investigation. Put his staff on leave, do a full investigation, and then come back and tell us what happened and who you're holding accountable, right? If somebody needs to be held accountable. That's all I'm asking for, right? I just think it's a mistake to come out here and say early on that nobody's been fired when you need to do a thorough investigation, figure out who did it, and then if you know who did it, whether that be Waltz or somebody on his staff, okay, doesn't matter, they have to be held accountable, period, okay? It's, again, especially if you find out that it was done in a way that was extremely reckless, right? Or there was some nefarious intent from those individuals. And that's honestly the best way to make this story go away. That's the best way to make this story go away and to come out on the best end of this from a PR perspective, right? Because at this point, it's now a PR game. And from a PR perspective, I just don't think it's a good idea to not hold anybody accountable. I think that there should be a thorough investigation and you hold people accountable. And I think that is what is the best outcome from the Trump administration at this point. And I'm hoping that that's what they do. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.